Well, I don't know how many years on this earth I got left. I'm gonna get real weird with it.
All right. Hello. Can you hear me all right? welcome, one and all. This is a segment of the show where I get into some weird theories and we just kind of dive into it and see what the story is behind it. But this, we're not going to start with a video. We're going to actually start with some articles and stuff. So stick with me and we will unpack this. Let's see. Terra del Fuegan or Fuegonians. Bucket list for me is fishing Terra del Fuego for trout. Yeah, that's cool. So I'm gonna just jump right into this. Let me see. Where are we? Come on now. Because last week we did ley lines, and I put this one off, and now we have to go back to Antarctica because apparently throughout modern times there's been certain claims that native peoples from Terra del Fuego or Polynesian people from various locations visited Antarctica before. Well, Antarctica was officially discovered in 1820, so fairly recently. And you'll see that, like, even this is on the Antarctica expedition log website called thecoldestjourney.org. And it starts with circa 650, the 7th century Maori navigator Uiti Rengora claimed to have sighted southern ice fields. So we are going to dive into that. And then the next mention of anything is Magellan in 1522. So there's almost 1,000 years between that. And you get James Cook talking about the ice. But 1820 is when we actually get official sightings of the landmass of Antarctica. Now, there's Polynesian folklore that we just talked about. But Polynesians have really explored quite a bit of the South Pacific and sub-Antarctic waters. There's a few islands. Macquarie Island is one that pops out, but we'll get to that later on in the segment. A new study shows that Enderby Island, 500 kilometers south of New Zealand, was settled by Polynesians for about 70 years. According to the author of the study, it also disproves the widespread belief that Polynesians ever went to Antarctica. In the popular imagination, Polynesian culture is unlike any other. It is a people of explorers, a people who conquered the Pacific Ocean long before anyone else, a people who, in their outrigger canoes, would fiercely go on long voyages into the unknown. But also, in the popular imagination, it is a people who dressed lightly and appropriately for a typical tropical island that they inhabited. To many, it will therefore come as a surprise that a new study documented that around 1300 AD, a group of Polynesians settled for up to 100 years on the remote Enderby Island, part of the Auckland Island archipelago. It lies around 500 kilometers south of New Zealand and about 2,000 kilometers north of Antarctica, so about halfway between New Zealand and Antarctica. It is located right in the middle of the latitude region known as the Roaring Forties and is considered a sub-Antarctic island. Not the idea for the scantily clad, or not the ideal place for the scantily clad Polynesians, one would imagine. And according to Ethel Anderson, professor emeritus at the Australian National University and main author of the study, the cold would indeed have been the main problem for these Polynesians. It would have been very difficult for them. Oddly enough, Polynesians in the cool climate of southern New Zealand made no clothing such as trousers or jackets, nor footwear or hats. They wore kilts and capes, either woven or made out of seal skin, but they must often have been very cold. Yeah, I imagine it'd be cold living on that frigid island. Strife made them come, food made them stay. Why did these people choose to not only migrate that far south, but to stay for so long? Well, the Enderby Island's lack of warmth and comfort is made up for in food supply. Enderby is about 500 kilometers, or sorry, not 500, about 5 kilometers long, and mostly shrub covered, while the much larger and higher Auckland Islands just to the south is grassy. But from the shore to about 70 meters. I'm all over the place today, Hive. Somebody wake me up. No capes. Are you going full Edna mode on us, Logan Fisher? Antarctica is the pot of gold at the end of the firmament. That's sort of true in a way, Logan. How do they get over the ice wall? 6 days until the final experiment? Oh my gosh. Okay, where was I? Yeah, I just need to take a break from reading for a second to let my brain catch up with my mouth. About 70 meters above sea level, both islands have thick and tangled forest. Between these wild sheared trees and on the sand dunes of Enderby, the Polynesians found an abundant food source: sea lions who come to breed. Moreover, the Auckland Islands are home to big cabbage-like plants known as the Macquarie Island cabbage. This, along with seals, fish, and chicks of albatrosses and other seabirds, made for a rich and plentiful diet. The feasting on these foods is also the main trace left of the settlers. Along a 500-meter stretch of beach on Enderby Island, numerous Polynesian cooking ovens and leftover charcoals were found. And in one area of the beach, there was a midden full of seal bones, albatross bones, and a lot of other bones, many with cut marks from butchery. You would think that once they got so far south and experienced the cold, they would just turn around and go back north. But they were from a culture that was used to settling new islands, so they probably thought that they would at least give it a chance, Ethel Anderson said. I suppose they got there and realized that there was no problem with food resources. So from that perspective, things were fine. They may even have explored other islands in the area after they settled, he said. But while the ample food supply was the carrot that made them stay, the Polynesians may have been under the influence of the whip. Often Polynesians went somewhere new because the strife with other groups. So they may have left under those circumstances and then felt they couldn't go back. He said, yes, this might have been like a refugee camp. But there's the sea lions and the tangled forest and some of the veg that they have to choose from. The Antarctic journey of, I hope I'm saying this right, UET Rengora. Ethel Anderson is now retired, but while he was active, his career as an archaeologist took him far and wide, from Madagascar across the Indian Ocean, through Melanesia, Polynesia, and all the way to the Galapagos Islands. He studied remote island societies. Originally, though, he is from the south of New Zealand, and some of his ancestors were from the Polynesian group that first settled in New Zealand, the Maori. For him, therefore, this study was unusually important, and not only for geographic reasons. In the study, he argues against the widely held beliefs that Polynesian explorers went as far south as Antarctica itself. This belief spread, according to Atul Anderson, because of a traditional Polynesian story recorded by British ethnographer Percy Smith in the 19th century. It has been argued that the Maori got as far south as Antarctica and even walked on the ice, but I have never thought that this was at all probable. I am part Maori myself. In our tribe, Nagai Tahu, which is the southernmost Maori tribe, we don't have any such traditions, which we probably would have had if we had actually done it, he said. The traditions recorded by Percy Smith speak of the legendary Polynesian explorer Uiti Rengora, who on his travels is supposed to have seen both ice floes and large sea mammals. But since then, Atul Anderson said, it has been discovered that the tradition is not an original ancient one, but one that had been added to Maori folklore at a later date. It is believed to have come from Polynesians who sailed on European sealing and whaling vessels to visit the Antarctic in the early 19th century. There's no evidence that these stories have any ancient origins, but the only way to resolve the question is through archaeological evidence. All right, and instead of reading more onto this, well, yeah, they left because of climate change and so forth, but that's not what I wanted. Here we go. Tales of the Old World. Hold on, pal. I can't get my sound going. I'm telling him to hold on, and it's my fault. But there we go.
Antarctica, due to its harsh climate, is the most difficult place on Earth to perform archaeological research. The research bases and expeditions have only uncovered a tiny percentage of the continent. If there are artifacts or ruins to be found, they're covered in thick layers of snow and permafrost, waiting for us to discover them. The closest people to Antarctica in the ancient world would have been the natives living in Australia and New Zealand, and the islands around the Pacific like the Cook Islands and the Tonga Islands. When we look at the oral histories in these areas, we find stories of ocean travelers making it to cold waters, where they saw huge land masses and mountains covered in snow and icebergs in the water. But could it really be possible for a civilization who didn't even possess the use of metallurgy to successfully make a 4,000-mile journey?
I do want to say that if, they're living in New Zealand, on the South Island of New Zealand and Derby Island and stuff, they would have seen icebergs. Icebergs do drift into those waters. You can see icebergs off the South Island of New Zealand. I'm pretty sure. I looked into it and said, yeah, that this is a site that people see, and especially during that period that they call the Little Ice Age. But, well, I guess maybe that wouldn't affect the southern oceans. Maybe they had a little ice age of their own. Be interesting to look into that.
Across open water to reach a continent with little to no resources. This oral history of the Maori journey to Antarctica was recorded in 1904 by New Zealand ethnologist and surveyor Stevenson Percy Smith in his book Hawaii, the original home of the Maori. He writes, "Of the other islands of the Pacific which were first settled at this time, we have so little information as to their histories that nothing can be stated with certainty, and that the Marquesas received accessions to the population, if they were not for the first time then occupied, which I think is probable. We have seen from a former page that at 40 generations ago, or in 850, the Tahitian groups had people living on them, and most likely were colonized at about this period. All of the voyages indicated above, and others to be referred to on later, may cause surprise at their extent, but they were made in the tropical regions of the world, with numerous islands on the way, at which the voyagers could rest and replenish their stores. But I now come to one made by this daring navigator, Uite Rangora, in his celebrated canoe, which outshines all others, and shows him to have been a man worthy of taking his place amongst many of our own fearless navigators of ages long subsequent to the 7th century.
Now, those old outrigger canoes are so cool. Like, could you imagine being, like, out on sea in one of those? They don't have, like, necessarily what you would... They're basically ships, so right, but they're built on like a platform over two big long canoes. It's really neat, with sails on them, and in that platform there can be like little huts built, and they can have cooking area and everything.
In the history of Te Aru Tonga Nuku, who in this time was also a great voyager, we find the following. The desire of Te Aru Tonga Nuku and all his people on the completion of the canoe was to behold all the wonderful things seen by those of the vessel in former times. These were those wonderful things, the rocks that grow out of the sea, in the space, beyond Rapa. In this context, the word space is defined the same way we would define it today. The monstrous seas.
Beyond Rapa, like, isn't Rapa mean island? Beyond islands? So, I mean, they could be talking about continents. I'm not sure. But, yeah.
Female that dwells in those mountainous waves, whose tresses wave about in the waters and on the surface of the sea, and the frozen sea of Pia, with the deceitful animal of that sea who dives to great depths, a foggy, misty, and dark place not seen by the sun. Other things are like rocks, whose summits pierce the skies. They are completely bare, and without any vegetation on them. The above is as literal a translation as I can make, and the meaning is quite clear, that the bare rocks that grow out of the frozen sea are the icebergs of the Antarctic. The tresses that float on the monstrous waves are the long leaves of the bull kelp, over 50 feet long, quite a new feature to the people who dwelt in the tropics, where there is nothing of the kind.
But there's plenty of bull kelp around New Zealand. There's bull kelp around. So bull kelp is a sub-Antarctic type of kelp, but it doesn't. It does grow in some areas of temperate water as long as they have the right currents, which New Zealand does. As far as the Tongas and stuff, they may be too far north, but at least New Zealanders would have been familiar with bull kelp.
The deceitful animal that dives so deep is the walrus, or sea lion, or sea elephant. The frozen ocean is expressed by the term for arrowroot, which when scraped is...
So why would it be a walrus? Walruses live in the North Atlantic and North Pacific. Walruses don't live in the Antarctica. And something that dives so deep, why would it not be a whale? Why would it be a pinniped at all?
Is exactly like snow, to which this simple people compared it as the only or best simile known to them. Now, the Antarctic ice is to be found south of Rapa in about latitude 50 in the summertime, and consequently, both Wi Te Rangora and Te Aru Tonga Nuku, at different times, 250 years apart, must have gone to those high latitudes, as the story says, to see the wonders of the ocean.
Well, again, icebergs drift up from Antarctica into the South Pacific, that does happen. And the bull kelp it will also grow in the South Pacific, where these people could have seen it without going to Antarctica.
Since the above account of these Antarctic voyages was written in 1897, I have come across a further confirmation of the story. When relating my visit to eastern Polynesia, to the Maoris of the Ngāraru tribe, west coast New Zealand, I was asked if I had also visited the part of the ocean where the traditions state that the seas run mountains high, coming along in 3 great waves at a time, and where dwelt the monster, the Marakio. Now, the Marakio is a well-known figure depicted on ancient Maori carvings, and the origin of which has much exercised our ethnologists. It has the body and face of a man, but the lower half is a fish's body and tail. In fact, it is just like the merman, but it has, in addition, 2 long tusks coming out of the mouth, which the Maoris call ngongo, or tubes. These are as long as from the mouth to the waist of the figure. To my mind, this is the Maori representation of the walrus, or sea elephant,
Is that why we're talking about the walrus? Okay.
which they could see only in high latitudes. The old man who questioned me on the subject
Or,
clearly
hear me out. Have you ever seen a whale skeleton laying on a beach? Just bear with me, because they look like they have big giant tusks, because a baleen whale has the two long lower jaw bones that stick out, and they look like big old tusk. Oh my gosh, let me see if I can find one. Beached whale bones. Let's see. Come on. Yeah, we're going to pull them over just a second. I'm going to get it to you. So like seeing something. Well, that's not even a real whale. What are you talking about? Something like this sticking up out of the ground, right? Seeing, get the big ribs. There we go. That's kind of what I'm talking about. It looks like it has big tusk. Yeah, and they'd have folklore about it, right? You find out on the beach. Food for thought.
clearly had it in his mind that the Maroochydore dwelt in that mysterious part of the world from whence their ancestors came to New Zealand. It would seem that this confirms the Raro-Tongan story. The Tongans have also some tradition of the ice-covered ocean, which they call Tai Fatu.
Rapa Nui has never been covered in snow in our time, within the Holocene that I'm aware of.
Which means the thick, fat-like, or congealed ocean, and to which some of their ancestors had been in long ages ago. This I learned from Reverend J.E. Moulton, the best living authority on Tongan traditions, who after this will deny to the Polynesians the honor that is their due as skillful and daring navigators. Here we find them boldly pushing out into the great unknown ocean in their frail canoes, actuated by the same love of adventure and discovery that characterized...
I just don't believe their canoes were as frail as we seem to make them out to be. They were making big journeys in those things.
...our own race. Long before our ancestors had learned to adventure out of sight of land, these bold sailors had explored the Antarctic seas and traversed the Pacific Ocean from end to end. Considering the means at their command, their lightly built canoes, the difficulty of provisioning the crew, the absence of any instruments to guide them, I feel justified in claiming for these bold navigators as high a place in the honor roll as many of our own distinguished Arctic and Antarctic explorers.
Well,
Many people have doubted the ability of the Polynesians to make the lengthy voyages implied in finding the race in places so widely separated as Hawaii, Easter Island.
see, and that's the thing too, is they knew that there were peoples that lived in Arctic waters and survived and thrived and were able to navigate them in canoes and small boats and things like that, and even travel on ice floes and things. We knew that because there were people like that in Russia, and there were people like that in North America, Greenland. People live in that lifestyle, so they act like, the Polynesians just couldn't do that. Sure, they could have. I don't think they did, but they could have. I mean, they had there's no reason to think that this group of humans would not be able to innovate how to survive on seal skins and things like that. Yeah, that just...
New Zealand and the Northwest Pacific south of the line. But we cannot doubt the very definite statements made in their own traditions. The love of adventure, of moving about from place to place, which is so characteristic of the race even in these days, has always been a feature in their lives. More often than not, they made these adventurous voyages with the definite object of establishing new colonies in which to settle, taking with them their domesticated animals, seeds, plants, and families. It has already been pointed out the effect the vast number of islands in Indonesia must have had on the people in increasing their power of navigation. In passing onward by the New Guinea...
Yeah, we don't have any evidence, though. Keep that in mind. We don't have any evidence of people ever, visiting. Folklore, unfortunately, is not... it's not the most effective way of storytelling. Now, folklore can come to present to be retroactively said, hey, I think this is the thing. Hi, Antjer. Because like you think about like Vikings coming to North America, oh, that's folklore, right? And it's just the saga of the Greenlanders is it's all folklore. And then they find Lacrosse Meadow in, is it Newfoundland or Labrador? I think it's in Newfoundland. It's in Newfoundland. Yeah, I'm gonna go with Newfoundland. Newfoundland. What is Newfoundland, Alex? For 500, please. Yeah, I think it's Newfoundland. But yeah, we found the settlement, and it's like, oh well, it's not folklore anymore. So that's true. That's a thing. And there's also like the folklore about the cities in the middle of the jungle, the rainforest, in the Amazon. These beautiful cities, these vast, beautiful cities in the Amazon, right? And by the time hundreds of years have gone by, and then by the time that that explorers are able to cut their way into that part of the world, those kingdoms have fallen to the diseases that preceded actual interaction with with the white people, with the Europeans, had already wiped out these jungle kingdoms, these cities in the rainforest, and for a long time it was like, oh, it's got to be folklore, right? There's no real lost kingdoms. But now we've got the satellite imaging and stuff, and we can see the foundations of these cities. It does not take long for the rainforest to take back what what was once its. But when it comes to places like Antarctica or Greenland, the cool thing is that it's cool there and it preserves stuff. There's no jungle to swallow it back up. Best case scenario is it's preserved in a block of ice, so you get even like soft tissues and stuff preserved.
Solomons to the Fiji group, the idea must have forced itself into the minds of the people that the whole eastern world was covered with islands, and that they had only to move onward into the unknown to find more lands on which to settle. Actuated by this ruling idea, they undertook long voyages in the assured belief of finding land.
I don't think it was an assured belief. I think they had a complex system of watching birds and sea mammals and weather patterns and currents, and were able to chart around about where islands should be based on those factors. And then they used the stars and the sun to navigate by to get to them and make sure that they were going in the right directions and things like that. The Polynesians weren't cavemen. Good grief.
This story, relayed to us in 1904, is held as truth by locals in New Zealand and the Cook Islands, but modern historians dismiss it as fiction. Could this journey even have been possible? It would have taken several months to reach the mainland Antarctica, and there would be few resources for them when they got there. The weather would be harsh, and the seas dangerous and unfamiliar. But the Maori were expert seafarers. Their knowledge.
The thing about the resources, I don't know if I agree with that. Like, we just looked at that they could have the winds on Enderby Island anyway were able to thrive on seals and seabirds, probably penguins, and different wild cabbages and stuff like that. They may in Antarctica, obviously, they'd have more trouble with vegetation, but you know what? Maybe not now, because the flowers are blooming in Antarctica. I don't want you to get too excited about that. I want you to think it through. The flowers are blooming in Antarctica. This is not good news for us humans.
Navigation was 1,000 years ahead of its time. They would use the stars as markers. The Maori star compass divided the 360 degrees around the canoe in the open ocean into different houses. The location of these houses depended on where the sun, moon, and stars set and rise. The navigator would attempt to keep the canoe on a course relative to these observations. They knew how the patterns of the sun and moon change with the seasons, and would closely observe patterns in tides, waves, and sea creatures to determine where land was.
Okay.
They had successfully found tiny...
I got ahead of myself and didn't mean to be throwing shade at you, babe. If you cover this, then I'll recant what I just said.
landmasses like Easter Island, Hawaii, and the Samoan Islands, and other remote lands in the middle of the vast Pacific using these techniques. They had an understanding of the planet that reached beyond navigation. They knew exactly how the Earth moved and worked in relation to the stars. So if they did embark on a journey...
It's a species of cabbage called the Macquarie Island cabbage. The Macquarie Island is actually even further south than... oh, goodness. Here. Yeah, before we get too far, we have more map. I'm the map. All right, so... We're not in Texas anymore. We are in the South Pacific. And we are looking at the very, very South Pacific. Why are you so blurry, though? Okay, there we go. Okay, so here, this is the Auckland Islands, right? Campbell Island. But if you follow this down, I think is this Enderby? No. Okay. Anyway, if you follow this ridge down from New Zealand, Macquarie Island, I believe, is on this ridge. And they found... Why are you not pulling my islands up? There we go. There's Macquarie Island. Macquarie Island cabbage is from this place. And as you can see... It's pretty dang close to Antarctica. And they did, when they discovered this island, well, I think he actually talks about it. So we'll get back to his real quick.
To find Antarctica, they would have known exactly where they were going and what they were going to find. This was no sail off into the unknown type of situation. And it's very possible that even earlier explorers could have made this journey to go off of. When traveling from islands in the Asian Pacific over to the Americas and Hawaii, Easter Island, etc., they would have had to spend upwards of 60 days on board a ship with very few islands to stop and refuel at. They did this by making sure they had enough preserved foods like starchy flour, and they would pair that with fish from the water beneath them. Their drinking water sources came from a variety of methods. They would bring fruits high in water content like coconuts, stop at islands they knew had fresh water, or they would create a seep well on an island. But on extremely long journeys that they frequently
That's how a lot of people who get like stranded on islands are able to survive, by creating a seep well like that. There was a group of people that lived on an island in the Indian Ocean that were stranded and using a seep well, and it's somewhere near the Seychelles. Yeah.
Had to make to reach these faraway land masses. They had another advanced technique to collect water. They created a makeshift still to collect moisture from the air and turn it into fresh water. They would cover a container or depression in the canoe with a tarp or leaves and place a weighted object in the center to create a slope. The condensation would then gather in a low point and could be collected as fresh water to sustain them. These boats they were sailing in were also not the tiny canoes we usually associate with the Polynesians. At one time in their history, they had massive ships that reached dimensions of 50 to 100 feet. They were double-hulled with a huge sail and a raft-like platform, able to...
Yeah, the only thing stopping the Polynesians is they ran out of trees. They were going places.
To accommodate many sailors. These large vessels fell out of use, and the technology to build them was eventually lost. So they could have incorporated other advanced techniques of travel that we still just don't know about. But what about artifacts? Surely if they reached Antarctica, they would have touched down on land to search for resources, hunt, and survey the land. If they left the tiniest artifact on the continent, it would prove humans have known about the icy world over 1,000 years before European explorers found it. As of today, there have been no ancient artifacts found in Antarctica that we know of.
Well, that's not exactly true.
But there have been on islands nearby. Archaeologists have found Maori pot shards on the Antipodes Islands, off the southernmost tip of New Zealand, and on the Enderby Island, which is considerably south of the Antipodes. These pottery shards date back to the 13th or 14th century. And mysteriously, on the sub-Antarctic island of Macquarie, a craft...
This is what I was talking about, right here in Macquarie Island.
Quote, ancient design was found in 1810. This is considerably south and west of the Auckland Islands, only 560 miles from mainland Antarctica. It has been suggested that the craft was burnt for fuel that year in the ensuing penguin and seal oil fires, and that it was possibly a Polynesian vessel. I believe this remote island in the sub-Antarctic could very well be a refuel point, or even a settlement for these ancient Polynesian travelers spoken of in the Maori oral histories.
But what would they... Okay, I would say, this could be the furthest reaches, right, that the Polynesians ever reached on Macquarie Island. I'm okay with that, but to claim that this was a refuel station for them to go further, you're going to need some evidence to back that up, friend. You're going to need something more than just this assurance that, oh yeah, this was just a way station.
An archaeological study on this island could very well turn up groundbreaking discoveries.
All right, let's go back.
All I have for you on this topic for now. Hit the like button if you enjoyed it, and please leave a comment with your thoughts.
All right, so before we get into the next segment of this, because there's a whole other section of this I got to talk about, but I want to go back to the map real quick and look at Macquarie Island, because there's not much. This is where they keep showing in those pictures, is that right there, but if they did settle here, this still would not be the southernmost settlement of pre-European people, because if we journey far, far, far across the Pacific, we reach this southern tip of South America, Terra del Fuego, with the Terra del Fuegans. Now, for a long time, they're like, oh, these people didn't really get out of sight of the coast. They did have, a fantastic trade network that ran all the way up the coast to Aztec Kingdom, right? From here to here, there's a big coastal trade network, right, that went up and down. From they found artifacts from Central America, as far south as Chile, from this trade network. But we're not looking at that side of it. We're looking at this side of it, because they just lived up here. They, there's this waters are rich with toothfish, which are a staple of the Terra del Fuegan diet. But recently we found out that there were settlers on the Falkland Islands, which are these two big islands right here off of South America. For a long time they're like, oh no, they didn't make it out that far. But now they're claiming that, hey, we found some evidence. We found some fire pits and things like that do indicate that the Falkland Islands were inhabited by early humans. Now, in 1972, a similar claim was made about St. George Island in the South Falkland Islands, which are... Let me see. And the reason why this is something I wanted to take seriously, at least to an extent, is because, come on. What are you doing? What are you doing? It was on NASA's website that I learned about this. Authentication of Aboriginal remains in the South Shetland Islands. In 1972, the biologist Dr. Victor Ariel Gallardo recovered benthic samples from the bottom of the Admiralty in Chile Bay in the south part of King George Island for biological purposes. During his lab's analysis, he found 2 different projectile points in separate plastic bottles. Archaeological studies of the artifacts and the place they were discovered proved that these points were not originally from that place, but they were introduced by unknown people during the transportation or during the stay in the laboratory. During the field work, a survey was done in Admiralty Bay and on the northern coast of King George Island, finding numerous historical sites, one of which, Cuarto Pircas, was excavated the following year. So this is on, this is Earth Data, NASA's website, and it gives us the coordinates and everything to find this settlement, this alleged settlement. So let's plug this in and see if it'll bring us where we need to go. Okay, maybe the format needs to change. I need to take out the parentheses. Try that. Don't be like that. Come on. Okay, am I doing the coordinates wrong? That is the coordinates, right? 62 south and 58 west. 62 south and 58 west. Yeah. Okay, so let's go back. I guess we can just do St. George Island. Where is it? King George Island. Yeah, it's that one. This is King George Island. Okay, so quite a bit south of the Falkland Islands, quite a bit south of Tierra del Fuego, and this is some of the most dangerous ocean in the world right here. This down here, they call this the Strait of Magellan, is it claims so many lives. It's quite feared. People will actually go through all these freaking channels up here just to avoid crossing this. Like in modern boats and modern ships, they will go through all of this instead of risking sailing not even sailing. I mean, it's not just sailing ships. They risk traveling into this part of the sea. But this is the island that they allegedly found these artifacts on, and they found like a village and stuff. But it was too good to be true. It's not real. I had to go to the Wayback Machine to find some people trying to authenticate it. But that's why this is in the Wayback Machine. But this is on the NASA website. So no, there was no secret settlement. Oh, thank you so much. Was that Native Atheist? Thank you for the donation. Oh, really appreciate it. Thank you. Things are a bit shaky right now because I just moved. As you guys know, I've been here about what are we on, week 4 or something like that, close to week 4, and yeah, so anything that you can spare to help me out, I really appreciate it. I'm just trying to get things cooking. Oh, hey, Sumami. Yep, I say ope instead of oops sometimes. Trees, at least you get the pot. I get shards. The pot shards. Oh my gosh. I don't know what you guys are talking about. Pot shards. Did I say something that makes you think pot shards? I don't know what's happening here. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, like, what do you guys think? Antarctica, right? What appeal would that have to like Neolithic people? Now there would be bountiful food sources, right? They would have access to seals and seabirds, and but there might be some level of vitamin deficiency that I would be concerned about. Like they would have to import. There would have to be some kind of trade network where they imported some veg, right? Pot shards. Oh, pot shards. Pot shards. Oh, gotcha. I'm dumb. Good morning. Yeah. I'm glad Ember enjoys seep wells. Ember, if you want to build a seep well with me sometime, we'll do it. We'll make it our goal. Yeah, I do like the Wayback Machine, though. It lets me see stuff that oh my gosh. Yeah, that lets me see stuff that's not around anymore. I wonder if some of my old websites, because I made a lot of websites when I was younger. I wonder if any of those are on are on the Wayback Machine. I'll have to look after I'm done here. Yeah. Anyway, I'm going to finish being weird with it right here. Okay? Because I don't have too much more to say about the Stone Age Antarctica settlements. I don't. The Sahara wasn't always brown. Part of Antarctica's were probably weren't always ice. Well, that's true. Like, we do find there's tons of fossils in Antarctica. The only thing that would appeal to a Neolithic woman would be a Gillette razor. Do they have Gillette razors in Antarctica? I'm sure there's like 15 cat GeoCity sites I made on AOL as a child, right? Yeah, I got like GeoCities and Tripod. I had tripod sites. What was the other one? Angel Fire. Yeah, Angel Fire had sites. Leonardo DiCaprio. We'll build a seep well between electrolysis sessions. Yay. All right. Well, I'm going to end this segment here, right? Thank you for sticking around and being weird with me while we looked at the Neolithic exploration of Antarctica that wasn't. I'm going to go and, yeah. Be kind and take care. We'll see you next time.